Yep, that's gasoline. That's not good. Now, the problem is, that little hole, you should be able to see the oil line. You could before. No oil line. Because it's over full. Because we've got gas probably in the case of the engine now. Hey, this is Mike with Riding in the Ozarks, where we talk riding, rallies, gear, and wrenching. Today, we're going to talk DR650. So, that clip there in the beginning is what I found the other morning. So apparently the design on this carburetor is that if the petcock, which is vacuum operated, should fail, and gas leaks down through the petcock anyway, the float in the carburetor should stop it from flooding the carburetor. If it doesn't, then the carburetor floods, and there's no overflow on this except into the cylinder and the airbox, which is how we ended up with what we have. Now, if you watch my channel, you know this DR650 has been parked for a couple of years. Took me a little bit to get it running again. It's been running good, but apparently I don't know if it's the seals and the petcock and the O-ring and the float or whatever, just from setting and stuff, dried up and then aren't working right, but I filled up the tank of gas and parked the bike, and this is what I came out and found. Now we're going to show you what you got to do to fix all this and get it back on the road. Alright, that's the oil I drained out of the DR650 last night. We're going to show you what this is like. Might not really give you a very good perception of what it's like. So here's another pan where when I pulled the oil filter, I put a pan underneath it. So it's gasoline more than it is oil. So there's another YouTuber in town named Jordan DM Adventures who has a DR650. And he reached out to me, and we've been chatting a little bit, and I told him what was going on, and he said, bring it over. So, for one, the petcock on the bike was not working correctly, and the gas all drained out through the petcock into the carburetor. Well, the float on the carburetor wasn't working correctly, so then everything flowed up from the carburetor that's not in here now, till it got to this point, where it leaks into the cylinder, past the valves and down into the piston area and around the rings and down into the case, and then you have oil inside your case. So Jordan had the parts off of his DR where he'd done some mods for the float for the carburetor, so he fixed my float, and then he traded me petcocks because he had changed out tanks and stuff, and I got his manual petcock off of his bike, and we plugged up the vacuum line on my carburetor, and I'm going to put my carburetor back on now and a manual petcock back in my tank to put everything back together. But a big shout out to Jordan. Saved the day. I should be able to have this thing back together tonight and be able to ride tomorrow if we want. So I'm going to link to his channel. You guys make sure you go over and check him out if you're into DR, dual sport stuff. Plus he does some other cool stuff. So the other thing we found in the top of the carburetor was what was left of this filter. As you can see through it. You're not supposed to see through it. So all the material that was in there disintegrated and went down and was sucked into the carburetor. I don't know if that's because this bike had been sitting for 3 years and now I rode it a month and this has happened. But I had already ordered this upgraded filter from ProCycle along with some spark plugs and a carburetor tune kit. So anyway, luckily I already have that, so that's changed out. So I just backed this thing out and pulled the spark plugs out of it and cranked it to get all the gas out of the cylinder. I put new plugs in it, and we're going to put the gas tank on it. Jordan's going to bring some air filter oil because I don't have any over. We're going to oil up that air filter again, because I'm sure the gas has ruined that, the oil that was in it. And then we'll crank this thing up and see if we can get it started. Maybe take it for a test ride, see how it does after having the case flooded with gas. Now, everything I read online says you can turn around and just put cheap oil in it, run it for a couple hundred miles, a tank of gas kind of thing, and then re-drain the oil and change the oil filter again. You should be good to go if this happens to you. So I mentioned Jordan was bringing me some air filter oil, but we're not going to put it on there because the air filter is already degrading from the amount of fuel that was on it, so I got to replace that. But he just started up, but we're going to do it again. Go ahead, Jordan.
Ready?
Yeah. It didn't start quite that easy the first time, but it wasn't terrible either. Just had to crank it a little more. So, yeah. Apparently that's what you gotta do once you've filled the crank full of frickin' gas. Now we're gonna put the seat on it and the side plates and take it for a ride. I'm almost too short for this thing. Yeah. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you do that YouTube thing, subscribe down below, hit that bell to be notified, and as always, thanks for your support and keep on riding.